On the surface, this just looks like a striking image, but the longer you look at it, the more intentional it feels. The Joker, placed at the center, surrounded by objects he seems to have arranged in circles around himself. So the question is, what are we actually looking at here? And maybe more importantly, what are we supposed to notice? This is Beneath the Frame, where we take a closer look at how film creates deeper meaning. So let's slow this down for a second. We have the Joker lying at the center of the frame, and around him, these objects arranged in what look like concentric circles, knives closest to him, pointing inward. Then piano keys. And don't ever feel bad if you missed that. It took me way too long to notice it myself. And just beyond that, a small collection of roses. The symmetry, the spacing, the way everything seems to point back toward him, it feels constructed. Almost like a kind of statement. Like this isn't just a moment we're observing. It's something he's created. And that raises an interesting question. If a character is arranging the space around them like this, what are they trying to express? Not just about the world around them, but about how they see themselves within it. If we start at the center of the image, everything seems to lead us back to him. Not just once, but multiple times. He's framed again and again and again. And in film, framing is often used to draw our attention to something, to suggest that it matters. But what's interesting here is that this doesn't feel like something that's been done to him. It feels like something he's done himself. The way he's positioned, the way everything is arranged around him, it feels intentional. Almost like he's placing himself at the center and reinforcing that idea over and over again. So what does it mean when a character frames themselves like this? One way to read it is that nothing in his world feels more important than himself. But it could also be something a little deeper than that. Not just importance, but identity. Like he's not just at the center of the image. He's at the center of how he understands the world. If we move just one layer out from the center, we start to notice the first ring around him. A collection of knives, all pointed inward, toward him. And that's interesting, because it's not what you might expect. With a character like the Joker, someone we often associate with violence, you might imagine those knives facing outward, directed at the world. But instead, they're turned back toward him. And there are a lot of them. Enough to feel surrounding. So it raises a question. If these knives represent some kind of threat, where is that threat coming from? Because the way this is arranged, it almost feels like he's placing himself inside it, not outside it. One way to read this is that he sees the world around him as something dangerous, something that closes in on him, something that could hurt him. Almost like the threat isn't something he directs outward, but something he feels constantly directed at him. And what's interesting is how close the knives are to the center. They're not distant. They're not pushed away. They're right there, just outside him. So what does it mean to keep that kind of threat so close? Maybe it suggests that this feeling, this sense that the world is hostile or injurious, isn't something he's trying to escape. It might actually be part of how he understands himself, something central. And if that's the case, it starts to change the way we think about his actions. Because maybe what we're seeing isn't just violence for its own sake, but a response, or even a reflection of how he believes the world is treating him. If we move out one more layer, we start to notice something different. Another circle, this time made up of piano keys. And at first it might not even register. It didn't to me. They almost blend into the image. But once you notice them, it's hard to unsee. These aren't just objects. They've been pulled from the piano we can see nearby, removed from the instrument they belong to. And what's interesting about that is that piano keys, on their own, don't make any sound. They're part of something that creates music, but separated like this, they're silent. So it raises a question. If these keys are meant to suggest something like music or expression, what does it mean that they've been taken apart? One way to read this is that whatever he's trying to express isn't being heard. Or maybe more than that, it can't be heard. It's like the structure that would normally give his expression meaning has been broken, and what's left is something quieter, disconnected, but still arranged, still intentional. So even in that silence, it feels like he's still trying to communicate something. And maybe that connects back to the layer just inside it, that sense of threat, of being surrounded. Because if you see the world that way, and no one else seems to understand it, what do you do with that? Do you try to explain it? Do you perform it? Or do you start to express it in other ways? Ways that might be harder to ignore, but also harder to understand. And maybe that's part of what we're seeing here. Not just expression, but a kind of frustration with not being understood. Like the music is there, but no one is really hearing it. If we move out to what feels like the outer edge of the image, the pattern starts to break a little. The circle isn't as clean here. It's incomplete. And within that outer layer, there are a few different objects, but one of them stands out. A collection of red roses. In an image that's mostly muted, they're one of the few things that really draw your eye. And it makes you wonder, why place them there? Because if everything in this image feels intentional, then their position probably is too. One way to read this is that the roses represent something like love, or at least a connection to someone else. And in this context, it's hard not to think about Harley Quinn. But what's interesting is where that idea is placed. Not at the center, not even close to it. It's pushed outward, almost to the edge. So what does that say about how he values it? Because if the center of this image reflects what matters most, then this feels distant. And that's something I personally keep coming back to. Because when I think about how I would arrange something like this, I don't think I'd place love out there. I'm married, and if I were building an image like this to represent my world, I think that would be at the center, surrounded by and possibly even woven into everything else, not separated from it. So seeing it here at a distance, it feels intentional in a different way. Almost like it's something that's present but not central, something that matters but not more than everything else we've already seen. And that raises a question. Is this really love? Or just the idea of it? Because if he's placing himself at the center and reinforcing that again and again, is there actually room for someone else there? Or does everything eventually orbit around him? And even after all of this, it still feels like there's more here. More than we've talked about, more than we've probably even noticed. Because with an image like this, something this layered, this deliberate, it's hard to believe that any one reading could ever be complete. There are details we haven't fully explored, objects we haven't accounted for, choices that might mean something entirely different depending on how you look at them. Even something as small as the hammer near his hand could be meaningful, or it could be something else entirely. And that's part of what makes this kind of analysis so interesting. It's not about arriving at a single answer. It's about learning how to notice, how to question, how to sit with an image or a scene long enough for it to start revealing something to you. And the truth is, there are things you're going to see here that I didn't. Details that stand out to you, connections that feel meaningful, interpretations that take this in a completely different direction. And that's not just possible, that's the point. So I'd be really curious to hear what you notice. What stands out to you in this image? What feels intentional? What do you think might be happening beneath the frame?